Hello, everybody, and welcome to A Wild Camper's Diary. My name is Ben, and the aim of this podcast is for me to offer you my thoughts on the world of wild camping, reflections and insight on my own experiences, and hopefully some inspiration along the way. So, welcome to episode 7. Can't quite believe it. 7 episodes. And I've decided to call this one When I Camped in Africa. So I want to take you back to the year 1994. So what's that? 28 years ago. And it was a bit of a difficult year for me. The main reason being that my dad passed away in 1994. And I was 20 years old at the time. So not that old to experience something like that. And I just wanted to travel. I had a feeling that I wanted just to, go get away, do something a bit different. And I'd always had this kind of dream of heading off to Africa since I was a young boy. I'd seen documentaries on TV and so on, and programs about safaris and all the usual stuff. And it really intrigued me, and it was something I really wanted to go and do. And I had this opportunity. I was sort of in between kind of college and I guess diving into the world of work, and I just wanted to grab the ball by the horns. So I spent some time working and kind of getting the money together and doing all the preparation that you have to do when you go off on these ventures. One of the things I had to do was to get all my vaccinations, so that took a bit of time. So I was going back and forth to the GP, getting vaccinations for yellow fever and all sorts of weird and wonderful diseases that I could potentially be exposed to. Collected my malaria tablets, got everything sorted, passport ready, and I was off. And I headed off on, I think it was Christmas Eve. It was an interesting time to fly. Christmas Eve 1994. And I wasn't flying directly to my destination, which was Kenya. We had to go via France, pick a few people up, and then we had to go on to Sudan, to Khartoum in Sudan. And I didn't know anyone when I went. It was one of these kind of expedition things you sign up for. You send off the money, you turn up at the airport with your rucksack, and you meet the people that you're going to travel with. And up to this point, I had never flown in an aeroplane. So it was my first, I think it was my first time of flying in an aeroplane abroad. I'd gone abroad before, but I think on coach trips to France as a teenager and stuff like that. So this was my first time on a big aeroplane. So it was all rather exciting. So yeah, we headed off, and there were a couple of Brits, there were some Australians, Irish, German. There was a real mix of people, which was excellent. And we had delays. That's it. I remember there was fog, terrible fog, and in London, and so we had to wait a day to leave. And got put up in a hotel. Eventually, we got going, and I think Christmas Day I was in the air somewhere above Northern Africa, and we landed finally in Kenya, Nairobi, I think it was, and then we were bundled into a kind of converted army truck and huge vehicle, which was the thing that we would eventually be travelling in. And we headed off to our destination, which was Mombasa. We arrived in Mombasa very late at night, I remember, and it was hot, and it was just a real assault on the senses, like nothing I'd ever experienced, and just the sounds and the smells and the temperature and all of that. And I just remember after 27 hours of travelling and delays, collapsing into a tent that had been put up for me on the beach of Mombasa, Indian Ocean, and just collapsing and falling asleep, and then waking up the next morning, which I think was Boxing Day, and opening my tent and seeing this incredible white sand and palm trees and just this crystal blue ocean kind of lapping the shore. It was amazing. I still remember it. And then I spent the next 6 weeks traveling around East Africa. So we kind of went in a circle from Kenya. We spent some time in Kenya, and we travelled up through Kenya. And where did we go after that? We went across to Uganda. We then went over to Zaire, which doesn't exist anymore. It's now the DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo. But we went to Zaire. We were due to go to Rwanda, but those of you that know your history will know that Rwanda was experiencing a terrible civil war at the time, and there was what we would later discover to be genocide occurring, and it was very dangerous for anyone to travel. So we didn't go there, and we missed that out, and we went to Tanzania, and then I finished off going to Zanzibar. The trip finished in mainland Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, and then I went with a friend, Irish guy, and we headed over to Zanzibar and spent some time in Zanzibar before heading home. And the entire time, I'd say 90% of accommodation on that trip was camping. It was wild camping, but I didn't call it wild camping. I didn't even know what wild camping was. It was just this is what we're doing. We're flying to East Africa, and we're going to be going on this big overland expedition, and we're going to be sleeping in tents. So the majority of the time we were in tents. I think out of our group there was about 12 of us in the group, and each night a couple of us would sleep on the truck to kind of protect our belongings and kind of just for security purposes. But the majority of the time we were in the tents, and you just kind of got used to it, sleeping in a tent every night. So there was no worrying about being moved on like we talk about here in the UK. But we just slept in our tents, and that was interesting. Being in the middle of nowhere, out in the bush. We had to have all our water in kind of huge jerry cans on the truck, and often most nights we would cook over an open fire. I think every night we did that, actually. And we had a guide with us. We had a guy called Saeed, who was this really lovely Kenyan man, and he travelled with us, and he was our kind of like our fixer, I suppose, and translator, and got everything sorted for us. I remember once where he killed a chicken in front of me, which slightly threw me because I hadn't seen anything like that. And then we ate it for dinner that night. And we got to see some incredible stuff. I got into what I call real Africa, away from the tourist spots, the hot spots, and into proper rural East Africa. And we got to meet some really interesting people and see things that you would never imagine seeing. So it was a very different experience to what I was used to in England. One of the key things was that 28 years ago, so 1994 going into 1995, there was no internet, or if there was, it wasn't accessible to Joe public, and I didn't have a phone. Hardly anyone I knew had a phone. I think they were just starting to come out. They were just available, but they were quite expensive. So no one had a phone in my party at all. I don't even remember having an email address. I certainly didn't go to an internet cafe or anywhere, not that there would have been one in the jungles of East Africa. So I spent the entire 6 weeks with no contact with anyone from home, no friends, no family, my mother, no one. We didn't even really have access to phones or anything. So it was a case of just sending out the postcards. Real old school, when we got to places where we could post off postcards, and that was it. And I didn't see my mother for 6 or 7 weeks, until I got home, and I rocked up back in Surrey, looking like an absolute wreck, but very happy. I'm there were potential dangers along the way. So one of the things we had to be really careful of was malaria, because I remember there were some parts of the region that we were traveling in where malaria was really prevalent, and I found out afterwards that the Australian guy that led our group went down with a really bad a dose of malaria just after we left. I was told when I was there that if we weren't careful and we weren't taking our malaria medication, there was a strain of malaria that could kill you within 24 hours. So you had to be pretty careful. You had to take your medication, which had potentially pretty bad side effects. So you had to kind of make that call. Should I take the medication, risk the side effects, or should I risk a strain of malaria that could kill me within 24 hours? So I took the medication. I was generally okay with that. I didn't have any side effects on what I can remember, and I didn't get malaria. So there we go. Lesson learned. One of the other dangers that we had to be mindful of was water. So we had to make sure that we weren't just drinking water from anywhere, because we as Westerners, as Europeans, our digestive system, our stomachs just weren't used to that. After a while, you become a bit more relaxed to it. So I remember we went to a guest house or a little restaurant or something, and I had some salad, which I was told you shouldn't have, because they wash the salad in the local water, and I ended up getting very ill. So for about a week or two of the 6 weeks I was there, I was extremely ill. I had a fever, and I won't go into all the grisly details, but I remember being hauled up in the truck, feeling absolutely terrible, awful. Eventually it went, but and I had to get tested when I got back to the UK in one of those tropical disease places, and I was fine. But it's not nice at the time when you're in the middle of nowhere. And I remember we were hiking up into the mountains of Zaire, and I forgot to mention that the key purpose of this trip was to go and see the endangered mountain gorillas in Virunga National Park in Zaire, which is a park that kind of covers kind of Uganda and a bit of Rwanda and Zaire. And I remember at the time thinking, I don't care how ill I get, I have to see these gorillas. This is a once in a lifetime experience. So I remember just hiking up into the hills 2.5 hours, just feeling like death. And I remember thinking that if anything happens to me, I could potentially die out here, and I wouldn't be able to get to a hospital. The truck is 2.5, 3 hours away. To my knowledge, there were no satellite phones or anything like that. So it was a real kind of, I am truly in the middle of nowhere. No mobile, no sat phone, no way of getting to a hospital. I feel like death, but I have to see these gorillas. And it was an incredible experience. I remember, we got taken into the mountains, and we spent quite a lot of time kind of tracking this family of gorillas, and then eventually we found them, and it was just absolutely awesome. And I've never experienced anything else that I can even compare it to. Nothing. And I still hang on to that memory to this day. It was just the most amazing thing, being in their natural habitat, actually sat next to them, with them looking at you in eye to eye, and this kind of connection thing, and just awesome. I can't even begin to describe it unless you're there. So kind of sticking with animals and dangers, we had to be. We were camping in the wild. We were camping in places like the Serengeti and the Ngorongoro crater in Tanzania, which have very large concentrations of wildlife. There were packs of hyenas around. There were prides of lions. And you had to be careful. You kind of got used to it, but you could hear the animals. You could hear them in the distance. And I remember we were told that, when you go into your tent at night, you must not take any food into your tent. You must brush your teeth. They were saying if you don't brush your teeth, you could wake up with a mouthful of ants. There were stories of campers that had been pulled out of their tent by hyenas. And I won't go into any further detail, but you can imagine, because they're scavengers and they can smell the food. With lions, they don't really like. I was told they don't really like the sound of human voices. So if you don't kind of bother them, they don't really tend to bother you. But obviously, you have to be careful. But I remember we camped in this one place, and our guide Saeed said, "Oh yeah, there was a pride of lions just laying here by the tree last week when we were here." So it was real stuff. These animals were about. I remember getting very very close to rhinos and hippos. I remember getting out of my truck to go and take a photo with my disposable camera of some hippos. A few of us got very excited, overexcited, and we went right up to the edge of this river to take photos. And it was a stupid thing to do, and we got absolutely, really told off for that. The guy went nuts at us, the leader of the group, and said that they are the most dangerous beast in Africa, and they will take you out, and they will run, and they will kill you. So we really took a risk there. Lesson learned. Lesson learned. It was a great time. It was, you forgot everything. It was so enlightening. It was, oh, the weather was like nothing else. Heat like I've never experienced. It was gritty, dirty stuff. I remember kind of joking with the other campers, the other people I was traveling with, is whether us kind of white Europeans, whether it was dirt or whether it was a tan, because we hadn't washed for so long. So I think you'd probably got a shower once a week or every 2 weeks or something crazy. So yeah, it was an amazing experience. My wild camping experience in Africa. Not that I knew it was wild camping, and I'll never forget it. It's 28 years on, and I still talk about it as if it was yesterday. You can hear it in my voice. I still have very vivid memories of it, and it really impacted me. And so, would I do it again? Yeah, I probably would. Life has changed now. I have family, I have different commitments, but I would advise anyone thinking about doing something like that just to absolutely go for it, especially if you don't have any commitments in your life. I think life is too short, and I think it is all about seizing these opportunities, even if it's in this country. Like going and, I don't know, volunteering in the mountains of Scotland or something. Just do it. You're never going to have a chance potentially to do something like that again. And as you do it, you are creating adventure for yourself, and you're creating an experience that hopefully will stay with you for all the right reasons, and will create amazing memories that you can hang on to and you can share with other people. So there we are, when I camped in Africa. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this episode. It's most appreciated having you along, and I shall see you again for another episode of A Wild Camper's Diary.